All right, everyone. Welcome. I'm Christina. I'm a music therapist and owner of Healing Rhythms. And I'm just excited that you're joining me today in person. And those of you joining, looking at my computer picture over here, joining us remotely. So I'm hoping that we can really just have a conversation today, more than me like talking at you. So I'm going to invite you to come up even closer. I mean, I know we got the screen, but just really want to have more of a conversation with you and sharing about how do we use music to help people across all ages and stages of life, but also those who are on the spectrum and have different neurodiverse needs. So hopefully everybody can glean something from today. I'm curious, how many of you are parents?
Be really weird if I raised my hand.
And how many of you are care providers? Some of us wear multiple hats. Yeah, right. Okay. So I always like to start with knowing, is there anything like really burning that you want to make sure that we cover today? We're going to cover a lot of stuff, but I just want to be sure that everybody gets something meaningful out of this. So feel free to ask questions as we go along too. So we're actually going to start kind of how we just were. But I never know like where people have been prior in your day to spending time with us. So I'm going to start with a little mini relaxation session. We've had some topics today talking about self-care and how do we care for ourselves as a caregiver. But I want to reiterate that because it's really important. And so I'm going to ask you, if you have your phone on, if you can just turn it off or turn it on silent. Make sure that we have as few interruptions as possible. And if you're at home, joining us remotely,
make sure kids and dogs don't bark. Make sure you're in a peaceful, quiet room like a library.
yeah.
That way you don't, have something else that's louder so you can't hear.
So trying to get your distractions at home too. So I invite you to just give yourself permission to pause for a minute. If you want to close your eyes, that's okay. If you want to leave them open too, that's okay. Whatever's most comfortable for you. But inviting you into this space today, giving yourself that permission to pause. Feel the chair beneath you. Feel your feet grounded on the floor. And just begin to notice your breath. Allow yourself to be fully present in this moment now. Knowing that there's going to be distraction, sounds, wandering mind, and that's okay. Be kind to yourself and let you just come back to this space. Imagining that each breath is clean, fresh air from outside, or maybe it's a favorite smell that brings you peace and calming to your body and mind. Allow each breath to work within your body to bring you a sense of peace and calm. Maybe you breathe in through your nose. And then exhale and let go. Allowing yourself to let the breath continue to move within your body. Maybe breathing intentionally into a place that you notice there might be some tension or stress. Imagining that you're breathing in that clean, fresh air favorite smell to help your body relax, and then intentionally blowing out and like letting go of those areas that might bother you. Allowing yourself to maybe imagine that you're in a peaceful place, a place that maybe you've been before, or you'd love to visit someday, a place that brings you peace, calm, clarity, whatever it is. Allow your breath to bring you what it is that you need in this moment now. Maybe it's a sense of hope, or maybe it's a sense of renewal or peace. Feeling refreshed or inspired. Allowing yourself to continue that breath work as long as you need. And knowing that you can come back to it, giving yourself that permission to pause. Using your senses to create a peaceful place so that you can center yourself and take some time to learn together and to share together. So let your breath become smooth and natural again. And this time, imagine that each breath you take in brings you strength and energy for the rest of our time together. Let your breath energize and refresh you this post-lunch time. Wiggling your fingers and your toes as you come back to this space. And when the music stops, joining us for our time together. All right, well, I give you permission to like move and to stretch. If you want to stand up, that's okay. Just let your body have that permission to move and adjust as we come back to our space. Obviously, we're talking about music therapy and how to use music intentionally, but it also means using music intentionally to care for yourself. And so we'll talk a little bit about that too, but I always like to start with a little centering because I never know what's your day been bringing you, what have you been doing before, and how do we just pause and recenter. So a little bit about Healing Rhythms. We are a team of music therapists. We serve 30 counties across greater southern and west central Minnesota. And our home base is here in Rochester. We have staff that live all throughout the area. We have staff that live in the Austin and Albert Lea communities, in the greater Mankato area, and also west of the metro, serving Waconia and all the way out to Olivia. But our focus is really how do we use music to help people? And that looks really different. It looks different if it's a 2-year-old coming in to our clinic that might have some sensory and sound sensitivities, and we're not really sure what's going on yet, to somebody who's maybe just diagnosed, or maybe it's an adult that's on the spectrum and has gotten a whole array of services for their, life, but looking for something new and different. Beyond working with people with autism and other different neurodiverse needs, we serve a lot of medical communities, hospices, hospitals, mental health agencies. So thinking about the different needs for other loved ones in your life as well as yourself. So we're really here to just support whatever needs people have. And we're really flexible in doing so. Our team is compiled of music therapists. And so a lot of people are like, what's that? But other people really are familiar with music therapy and maybe have experienced it with their loved ones, or they've heard from friends or family like, oh, this is a service I want for my child. So I'm curious, how many of you have heard of music therapy before? And how many of you have had a loved one receive music therapy services? Okay. So all of our music therapists, to be a music therapist, you have to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in music therapy. So, sometimes people are like, oh, so you're a music teacher. And I'm like, nope, actually, we're not. We're trained as therapists to figure out how do we use music as our tool. So our goal is never to teach someone music per se, but I was talking to some parents earlier today. It's how do we use music to support whatever other needs are going on? Music is just our tool. So maybe we're working on self-regulation. So how are we going to use music for somebody like mind body calming or some breath work? How are we going to use music to work on some communication skills and verbalization? Or maybe we're going to use music for some creative self-expression and do some songwriting and things like that. Or maybe it's more of like a social skills group that we use music. So it really just depends on who we're serving and what those needs are. As a quality control measure for you as family members or consumers, we always say you want to make sure somebody is board certified. That's just your quality control measure to know that they've met all the requirements. So the really cool thing is why and how music works. And so I'm not going to go into this crazy like neuroscience lecture, but everything we do is based on how music is processed in the brain. So I'm going to have you, I'm just going to have you tap or clap or whatever you're able to do with me. So I just want you to do that with me. Nice job. All right. So how did you know what to do? You watched me. Okay. So what part of your brain was working? What was that?
Visual.
Yeah, visual. So you were watching, right? So you're watching. So your visual cortex was activated. What else? Rhythm. So were you were listening for the rhythm? So your auditory cortex. What do you think, Bud?
I think it's by hearing it.
By
Even if you
hearing.
have your eyes closed, you can hear the beat and go along with it.
Yeah. So your auditory cortex, right? So
Yeah.
your ears were working. And what about were you moving? Were you moving your hands? So what part of your brain was working?
Also touch.
Yeah. So your motor cortex and your sensory cortex. So like all we were doing was listening to a drum and matching that, but your entire brain was activated. So that's the really cool thing about music is that we finally have the science that has caught up with what we thought was happening, right? So we can scan your brain and see in real time, like what's happening when you listen to music, what happens when you're singing along. And so we know that your whole brain is literally activated or lit up like a Christmas tree. So if you want to nerd out and look at some more information on this, there's some really great videos online that you can look at, or you can send me a message and I'll send you links to things. But if you have a loved one that has dementia or Alzheimer's, and maybe like they don't remember who you are or they don't know your name, but have you ever seen how they can still sing and they know music? Yeah. So that's again because of the different neural pathways and how music is processed in the brain. So that's why that they can do that. And so similarly, how we can use music to help with other neurological and brain needs.
There's 2 senses that don't activate in the brain, just 3 out of 5, taste and smell.
You have been doing your brain homework.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it only activates 3 out of 5 of your senses, so not your whole brain is activated. Because your brain also needs to be activated with smell and taste.
So we have all sorts of senses, right? And so a lot of times we use those senses in different ways to help us.
Yeah,
So when thinking about how do we use music and how do we serve the community, there's lots of different ways that our team does that. And so just helping you understand, we do things like community partnerships. So we partner with different schools to bring music therapy services in. We do a lot of just education and advocacy, but also just helping people understand, like, how can you use music? Maybe your loved one doesn't need music therapy, or maybe there's not a music therapist where you live, but how can we start to use music intentionally? And so maybe that's something like transitions. A lot of transitions are difficult, right? So how do we use the same song? Or I was talking with another mom this morning about how do we get our kids to brush their teeth? So is there a teeth brushing song that you use consistently? And maybe it's something that you found online, or maybe it's something that you make up and you improvise. Um, or maybe it's coming up with a bedtime routine of music to help calm and regulate our body. I mean, we do that as adults, so how can we transition that into our kids' lives? And so we're always just kind of assessing the needs, like what is it and how do we use music to serve the community? We often have different special events too in the community and sensory friendly things that we try to partner with and do. So things to just watch for and be aware of. And then two, we're really looking at how do we support the different needs of the whole person. So like, how are we supporting their cognitive or their brain needs? Like, are we looking again, like, what are these goals? Is it attention? Is it how do we help them process like sound sensitivity? Is it almost like some exposure therapy where we start with wearing our headphones, then we start getting into more sounds, and then can we transition away from the headphones? And academic skills, like how many of you, I'm wondering, can you say your ABCs without A, B, C, D, E, F, G? I mean, we're all laughing because we're adults. And how many of you like still like are like Q, R, S, T, U, V, you know, like you have to think about it and you can process it. And so thinking also like, how did you learn your math facts? I know I learned my math facts with music, right? Or like states and capitals, like there's a reason. And there's a reason that like corporate America, there's a reason that they write music and jingles like for advertising, right? Because you're like, oh, all of a sudden I'm like, my kids are singing some like insurance song, right? Like, are you kidding me? Or I can still tell you, this probably ages me, but I'm like, oh, 4888888 Pizza Hut delivery is really great. Like that's from when I was a kid. Are you kidding me? Like, so that just sticks, right? And so that chunking or those academic skills or maybe advertising, it sticks. And so that's why. So corporate America is using music intentionally and you don't even know it. Also, same thing of if you go to a restaurant, if you go to a sports bar versus like a fancy Italian restaurant, what kind of music are they playing? And there's a reason. So thinking about how can you use music in your own life that way, even just recorded music. But speech and language skills, how do we express ourselves? And that whole like social emotional aspect too of how do we modify behaviors or self-regulation, decreasing agitation, but how do we use music socially? And if you think about the beautiful thing about music is a lot of times we're making or experiencing music together, right? Have you ever went to a concert and you're like complete strangers with everybody, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, you're buddy, and like you're all experiencing life in this beautiful experience together. But also like how many of you have a song like if you have a difficult day, like what song you want to turn on because it's going to elevate your mood, right? Or maybe like you just really need a good cry and you know exactly what song you're going to turn on, right? Because you hear it and you're like, ugh. So emotional regulation and like mood matching and thinking about that, not just for yourself as parents and caregivers, but how do you do that for our kids? And the great thing about music too is it's automatic sensory integration. So we're talking about all of our different senses, right? But like even just with that little drumming activity, like we're listening, we're touching, we're feeling, our motor skills are activated. So it's automatically involving a lot of parts of the brain, but also your body. I don't know how many of you were in a session earlier, but we took a brain break at the end and we did a little dance party to Love Shack. Like, so can you imagine saying, okay, everybody stand up and we're gonna like move like this. And that like with there's no music, right? So have you ever watched a movie without music? Like-
I've watched movies without sound.
Without
just
sound?
Subtitles on.
Subtitles, yeah. I mean, think about Jaws. How do you know there's a shark coming? Do, 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 do.
Music.
So yeah, it's the music that tells us like there's a shark coming, or like it's almost Halloween. So how do you know in a scary movie that something's gonna happen? Like the music, right? So the music cues us, and we know because of our life experiences, like that's what music, scary music cues something scary in the movie. So thinking about that too. But thinking really too about how to use music for the entire development of a child. So socially, again, like, do you take, do you go to a library group and there's music, or if you go to a concert, or emotionally? And so thinking about how all these things, whether it's ABCs or if it's, head, shoulders, knees, and toes of, that's automatically like your entire body and motor skills are being activated. And so just thinking about how do we use music in overall child development? If you go to any kindergarten class or preschool room, do you think they're using music? Yeah. Wiggle breaks. So a lot of times people say, well, music, it's the universal language. Yeah, kind of. So I would agree with that mostly, but rhythm is truly the universal language. There's some different nuances between different cultures of how music changes, but I can tell you from working in pediatrics for 15 years, doesn't matter what language they speak. People are going to sing in their own language if I start that. So it's really quite remarkable. So music can be very universal, but overall rhythm is the most universal. And if you think about rhythm, if you just pause for a second, if you put one hand on your chest and either one on your abdomen or just rest it on your leg, what's going on rhythmically in your body? What are the rhythms in our body? What's going on? Our heart, yeah, our heart beating, our heart rate, our blood pressure. We started our session today with our breath, right? So our breath is rhythmic. Some people get into like brain waves and things like that. So we're truly rhythmic human beings. And so figuring out how can we use our breath to calm some of those rhythms in our body or to regulate. I was sharing with somebody earlier today. I'm like, I say, let's take a deep breath. And I model for my kids because sometimes mommy needs a breath, right? And to regulate. And so whether, you're a teacher or parent or grandparent or a caregiver, thinking about like, how do we regulate and model some of these things, whether it's our breath or using music so that we can help the kids and people in our lives. And it really works across all ages and stages, which is beautiful. I can tell you, so we have, not to pick on you, Sarah, but Sarah is one of our therapists who's with us today. And I can tell you that when she works with our adults that are on the spectrum, like it's the best part of their whole week, right? Like, and it's high fives and it's really high energy. And sometimes it's that way for the kids too. But it's just like we can reach all ages and stages, and thinking about intentionally in your own life, how do you just use music? Because it does reach all ages and stages, whether you're singing to a baby to help them not cry, or you've had a difficult day and you're listening to music on your way home before you get home to kids, or you're at some type of religious ceremony or a wedding or a funeral. Like music is everywhere, right? So thinking about how you can use it, but also recognizing like all types of music aren't for everybody, right? Like, so being aware of like what's going to work for the kids in your life, what's going to work for the young adults in your life, what's going to work for you is different than probably what's going to work for your significant other, right? Because I can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh, what type of music do you like? And they're like, classic rock. And then the spouse is like, oh, that's awful, you know? And so just thinking of that, or we can all laugh because thinking about the teenagers in our lives, like I'm guessing you probably don't care for some of the music that the teens in your lives listen to, right? But how many of us were told when we were kids, like, turn that off, that's awful by your parents or grandparents. And so it's in stages, but just recognizing music isn't universal in terms of preference and just being aware of like what works. And so I often tell people, if you're working, as a support person for someone and maybe they're nonverbal and you're not sure, and you're like, okay, he's 35 and family hasn't been able to tell us any music preferences. I'm like, let's do some math. Let's think about what music was most popular when he was in his like late teens, early 20s. Because if you reflect yourself, I'm guessing, is that the music that you might gravitate towards and say like that's your favorite? So it's a little quick math game that you can do, and think about, if you don't know where to start. And then it works for like if you're, excuse me, looking for music to play for your grandparent or something too, that's often a good starting point. So a lot of people ask me, excuse me, well, this is great. Music therapy sounds wonderful, but how am I going to pay for it? And so that's a lot of questions that family, caregivers, staff at schools, administrators ask me. And so some people private pay, of course. Others use budget or facility funds. And then we ran a lot of grants to help get funding and partnership for schools or different organizations. But for those of you, I know a lot of you were stopping at the DHS or DHS booth that was across from us earlier. But we work with a lot of the county case managers. And so if somebody has a family or consumer support grant, or if your loved one is on the waiver with Waiver Reimagine, music therapy is now a covered service. And Healing Rhythms is an approved provider with DHS. And so working really closely with the case managers to get all those services in place, we make sure that, there's the clinical need and how can we support your loved one, but we work then to get the service agreement in place. And then we see people in clinic, but we also do travel to some homes too. So it just depends on what is our staffing availability and where exactly does your loved one live. And we really focus on outstate, but we collaborate a ton with other approved providers so that we can get services like, for example, maybe somebody lives in Minneapolis, and so we refer to somebody up there. So we do a lot of collaboration just to make sure all the needs are met. So if you have questions, let me know, but happy to chat a little bit more about what does that look like. I also just like to give a little plug. If you are a veteran or have a loved one who's a veteran, we have a great partnership with DAV and their foundation to help get services to veterans too. And that looks different, whether it's maybe a child of a veteran or somebody who's maybe returning from service. So I can't take you with me and I can't take you into my clinic, but I can show you a lot of pictures. All these have releases, but when you look at these things, what do you see? Joy.
And
Yeah.
music.
And music. Yeah. Does music bring you joy, bud?
Yeah.
So you had asked to be my special helper. So we
Yeah.
just met this morning and he asked to be my special helper today. So I want to just give some examples of, I was chatting with one of the other vendors in the booth and we were talking about how do we motivate kids to cross midline, or how do we do this whole body sensory integration? And so here's an example of something that we might do with music therapy. How do we go sit up in this first chair?
There's a way to do music
Sure.
instruments like this.
Oh, yeah, with your imagination. That's awesome.
And it's your
Can you
voice
sit right here,
box.
bud? Sweet. Okay. So I'm gonna give you one mallet. Actually, here, I'm gonna take this away side. Okay. Can you just touch my hand? Okay. And can you touch my hand over here? What kind of music do you like?
I like different types.
Bring it down there. Okay. Okay, so now, let's pretend, I don't know. Do you like? I wish I had Jurassic Park music recorded.
Well, actually, there's some ways to do it on those, but they have a couple different songs using it, like just 3 songs, and they're very short, and then a bunch of other instruments.
And I bet you know what, in
I like
Jurassic
reading
Park,
all three.
there's some scary music in Jurassic Park, cause like the dinosaur like jumps out and hits you, right?
Mutant dinosaurs especially like tasting flesh.
Oh,
Even the plant eater dinosaurs, that's, yeah, but the plant eaters, they mess with the DNA and then they become meat eaters.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have you be my special helper
Mhm.
and just kind of show how we might use music to help people move a little bit more, okay? Here we go, ready?
Yeah.
Nice job. Thanks for being my helper.
Mhm.
Woohoo.
And there's a way to do it with these.
You
too.
can do it with this too. So just a simple example, but thinking about, okay, so. Okay, reach up high, reach down low, but like how can we provide rhythm or instruments as a cue? And then pairing it with preferred music. So a parent earlier was asking, well, do you just use like classical music? And I'm like, oh, no, whatever your kid listens to is what we'll incorporate. And a lot of times it's it's live music, but sometimes we just can't.
Or sometimes you can make up your own music.
And we do a ton of improv too. And we use instruments for different sensory needs, if we're thinking about sensory integration. So we're playing with this earlier, this is popular, so this is called, do you know what it's called?
The wave instrument.
Yeah, it's an ocean.
Yeah.
And so we have big ones and little ones, but, the whole purpose is so that you can feel like with the adult size ones that it brings, but when you feel the beads move, it's a whole body sensory experience.
Yeah, just focus on the noise.
Yep, and then we use instruments very non-traditionally, so do you know what this instrument is called? Do you remember?
Tambourine.
No, good try though. Can I rub this on your hand? What's that feel like?
It feels like beats.
It's
Are
very literal.
aren't like what you use to use the Play-Doh or play the
Yeah, like a,
like kitchen.
oh my gosh, yeah, a what? Yes, thank you, a rolling pin, oh my gosh, I didn't work. So can I borrow your arm for a minute? Can I have this one? Okay, so this is, does anyone remember what this instrument is called? That's the C, Sarah can't answer. C-A-D-A-S-A. What? So it's called a kabasa. But this, what does it feel like? It tickles. So instead of using instruments traditionally, a lot of times we'll think about like, what do we need to do for sensory integration or for grounding? Or maybe, can you give your mom a nice little massage on her back with that, very gently? So think about how do we use instruments non-traditionally, for sensory integration? Or maybe we're working on some finger isolation and we're moving the beads that way, or giving mom a massage, we're doing some self-care. So we look at different things like that. And then we also use a lot of multi-sensory things. So we're always, oh, what kind of books can we use? And so you're like, oh, this book. But lots of books, but also talking about things like, okay, little Bob Marley, right? But we can talk about love and self-love and caring for others. And so we incorporate like, what are some different meanings that we can use through music? Or what were we talking about earlier? You really like this one.
Dinosaurs, and this one has fun googly eyes.
It's fun googly eyes.
Except
It does. And dinosaur names that I don't know how to say. Yeah, so sometimes we need a little help from our friends, right? But just some different ideas of like how we might use some of these instruments and like, so, you know, this is, what instrument is this? Oh, there we go, a
And then
tambourine.
there's a tiny
But,
one.
you know, maybe instead of like playing it traditionally, we're gonna like drive it like a tractor and make up a song, you know, and so it's always thinking about things very non-traditionally of how are we gonna use music to work on whatever goals our kids or adults we have. And so it's just music is our tool. So thinking about music specifically for speech and language, whether it's aphasia or something else, like how do we cue speech? So let's see. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna switch. Here's a little song I wrote. I know it note for note, but don't. Yep. Uh-huh. Okay. So how did you know that?
Because we took a guess and we may have heard the song.
You may have heard the song before, but like I didn't even tell you like fill in the blank. So like we cued speech, right? And so if it's maybe somebody that's working on speech production, you hear music and your brain is anticipating, right? And the rhythm is cueing, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you all said it at the same time. And I say, okay, on the count of three, everybody, 1, 2, like you just did it. And so we use the aspects of music to cue, whether it's the rhythm or maybe it's how loud or how soft we play. And like, so we can cue different behaviors or goals that we're working towards. And again, why does it work? Because of how music is processed in the brain. And then also thinking, we talked just briefly about mental health, but like how do we use music to impact mood or our mental health? And whether it's a child in our life, an adult in your life, or maybe it's for ourselves, like, okay, well, we all know that song that's going to lift us up. Or we all know that like you hear that song, you're like, oh my gosh, it takes me back. And like, I know that that's the song that was at my wedding or at my grandma's funeral, or, oh my gosh, that was from my 9th grade homecoming dance. We're talking about homecoming today. So it cues, right? And those memories are there. But using it intentionally too for our mood, our self-esteem. And then our team is really all about how do we, again, increase that access. And so if you have questions about how do I get this? This is great. How do I get it for my child or into my son's classroom? Or maybe you're like, oh, my grandma has dementia. Like we can talk about that too, you know. We are just really passionate about how do we connect you with resources. And even if it's not our team, we're happy to just make that connection for you. So that wasn't supposed to be in there. And also just thinking about, again, if you're stressed, really thinking about how might you use music intentionally. So create a playlist, whether it's for you or for your child, and think about it being very intentional, but also thinking about pairing your breath, like we did right away when we started. You know, there's all sorts of different types of breathing, but you can pair your breath work with music. And so thinking about that rhythmically. But really our team we're here to help. This was a story that was about a little girl that we had supported, met her in the ICU, in the NICU. But then we're able to work with her outside of the hospital eventually, and then all the way through preschool and kindergarten, and teaching her how to use music to speak and how to use music to learn how to walk and meet all these developmental milestones. And now she's thriving. So we're really just here to help, and music is our tool that we do that with. So with that, are there any questions? Not all at once. So I think one thing for people is really thinking, like just for your own self-care of building out some of those playlists. Most of us do it really naturally. Like it's so easy now, right? Like Spotify or Pandora or whatever, Apple Music, whatever you use. Or even just knowing like what radio station or YouTube channel that you can use. And just being really intentional in that self-care for us as adults and as caregivers. Because I think that's the first step, right? Like we've all heard it. Get on a plane, they're like, put on your oxygen mask first, right? And so music is something that's super accessible to everybody. So thinking about just that's one super simple step. Like people don't even need to know that you're doing it, and you're like changing the station because you need to like regulate a little bit, or thinking about what are those songs that are going to bring meaning to you. So it's just the little simple things that we can empower you to do. But we're here as a resource. We're happy to help. And because we have a couple of minutes, is it okay if I end with another little relaxation session for you guys? Okay.
And there's a way to make music without an instrument.
How is that?
Well, I know how to do this.
Yeah, so our voices. So that's the great thing too. So our voices are always with us, right?
Unless we can't talk because we talk.
Oh, sometimes people talk too much too, but
Yeah, and then their voice dries out too
yep, and
much.
then they lose their voice, right? So, okay. We're gonna end with another little mini relaxation session. So to check the time, so we'll take about 5 minutes. And so I again just invite you to find that comfortable place where you're sitting. It's okay to reposition your body. Let your feet rest flat on the floor. Close your eyes if you'd like to. Just allow yourself to be fully present, not worrying about what's come before us today or what's yet to come. Allow yourself to have that permission to just notice your breath. The way your chest and abdomen gently rise and fall. Allowing your breath to work within you. Maybe you're taking those really deep, intentional breaths. Imagining it's your favorite smell. Maybe it's the smell after it rains. Smell of fall leaves, whatever it might be. Allowing yourself to breathe in that clean, fresh air. Allowing your shoulders to gently drop and relax. Until at each exhale, purposefully release any worries, thoughts, tension in your body. Allowing yourself to continue breathing in and gently, just like you need. Imagining that there's a gentle ray of light shining down. This light can be whatever color you choose, but it brings you a sense of peace, a sense of hope. And it gently shines on your head as it relaxes your thoughts, quiets your mind, smooths your forehead, and relaxes your eyebrows and your eyelids, jaw, and your cheeks relax. Allowing those feelings to continue flowing as this light gently shines on your shoulders. Relaxing your shoulders, neck. Allowing that light to shine on your chest and your abdomen. bringing you that sense of peace and relaxation and comfort as the light shines on you. Relaxing your entire upper body, moving down through your lower body all the way past your knee, way down through your toe. Your breath continue to work with you. Breathing in this time the energy and the strength that you need for the rest of your day. Breathing in that energy and strength. Wiggling your fingers and your toes. Allowing that breath to bring with whatever it is that you need in the moment now. Breathing, wiggling, letting your breath continue gently. The music stops and you're ready, knowing that you have the strength, the energy, and the skills that you need for the rest of your day. All right, well, thank you everyone so much for your time today. I hope that you all took something away that can be helpful, and know that me and the team at Healing Rhythms, we're here for you to answer questions and be a resource for you in the future too. Have a great afternoon.